In February 2019, I ordered a Librem 5 for $600 with my own money, believing this was the alternative to iOS and Android. But after over 3 years of dealing with false shipping promises, still no phone, still in the dark, being memed, and I couldn't even get my money back, I'm only left with regrets. To learn why I requested the refund, let's start from the very beginning. In September 2019, Purism decided to ship the Librem 5 in batches, each batch striving to be closer to the final version of the phone. For those of us who bought one then, we got to choose which batch, including Aspen, Birch, Chestnut, Dogwood, and of course, Evergreen, being more or less the final phone originally estimated for August 2020. This is the batch I chose and will be the focus of today. Each batch actually has its own story, but we're only going to focus on Evergreen. This decision to go with batches was done for transparency and to, quote, lead by example. A month later, an update. Aspen never shipped due to technical reasons, so they moved the people who asked for Aspen to Birch, and the remaining batches had smaller issues and some shipping delays, but Evergreen was going strong with no expected delivery delays or issues. August 2020 was still a go. A few months passed, and in early 2020, well, COVID hit, impacting their supply chain a bit, which they covered. Evergreen was still labeled for August 2020, the same estimate they originally made. Things are fine so far, but here's where it gets a little funky. In August 2020, the month where Evergreen was supposed to start shipping, they published a blog covering an update to the mold of the phone and some other changes, pushing the shipping to mid to late November 2020. Sure enough, in early November, they formally announced they started shipping the Evergreen batch. So, yay, right? Well, nothing until April 2021, when they published another article about supply chain issues, but never actually confirming in the article if it impacts them directly, and there were no status updates on shipping or where my Librem 5 was or anyone else's. And actually, after recording the video, they ended up publishing a Ball and Supply Chain Part 2 blog, which is a very similar blog talking about new things they've had to go with. This one is a little bit more direct in acknowledging that, yes, they are actually impacted by this, so it was very nice to see that, and I'm glad that they did this. Fast forward a couple months to June 2021, Purism announced that they just about hit a shipping parity, meaning they caught up with orders and can give real-time estimates for new orders, which is amazing news. The shipping parity was 6 to 8 weeks for the Librem 5 USA model. What's this? It's a whole different Librem 5 made in the USA. This is not actually the phone I ordered. These are two totally different ordering and shipping processes. The USA model attempts to lessen concerns of a supply chain attack when components or the whole phone itself are compromised in the production process. This is when I started getting irritated. I had a phone pre-ordered for 1.5 years, still had no shipping estimate despite them claiming they started shipping 7 months prior, and now I was given an option to pay an outrageous price for the same phone. But I'll actually get the phone. To this day, their shipping estimate is still set up this way. Whether or not Purism intentionally chose to incentivize the USA model for the shipping estimate alone doesn't really matter to me like it does for some people. My issue is this new device's shipping cannibalized the early adopters of the original Librem 5, whose money even made the USA model possible. So December 2021 came around, over a year since they announced they started shipping Evergreen batches, and Purism published this update recapping the year and what to expect in 2022. The Librem 5 USA made a debut, and there was no mention of the normal Librem 5 except them reassuring people they're being shipped to backers still. But don't forget, you can order a USA model, which is, quote, no trivial feat. And that's actually the last formal shipping update we've received the last 6 months, leading up to this video in early May 2022. If you didn't pick up on it, yes, this video was recorded back in May, and they did post that part 2 to that blog post regarding their supply chain, but there still is no formal PSAs on when people are getting their devices, and I have not received anything either. Marking over 3 years of me waiting for a phone, and about 1.5 years since supposedly my batch started shipping, and the device still has had the same ancient hardware this entire time, which has only risen in price a lot. Even with all of this said, which isn't looking great, I pushed on without requesting a refund. Where the red flags kind of start to rise for me is we have no clue how many devices Purism even ships, despite them claiming to be transparent about their whole shipping process. The best answer I could find is a post on their forum crowdsourcing people's orders and deliveries. As of March 2022, people who ordered a device in mid to late 2018 are beginning to receive them, meaning for them it's about a 3.5-year wait. These just aren't official figures, but it's the best we've got to work off of, and these are figures for actual orders, not YouTubers who got priority treatment. Now, so far you might be thinking, all right, Henry, they're bad at giving shipping estimates, and I totally agree with you. I think that is pretty much all we've confirmed so far. But here's where I think the line between incompetence and misleading is very blurred. This chart has almost no shipments through 2021 during the supply chain shortage, but in none of Purism's blogs did they directly say they were barely shipping Librem 5s because of supply chain issues. And you might think that it's implied, but here's what's crazy. It's very possible the supply chain had actually very little to do with their lack of shipments. One individual comments how people who asked for only a mass-produced evergreen batch, like myself, will only be offered one after the Librem 5 gets FCC certification, which was originally promised for the evergreen batch on their original blog post. The only people who received an evergreen before 2022 apparently originally requested development batches like Aspen and Dogwood, and instead received Evergreen without the certification. So in theory, all of these shipments were actually shipments for people who originally asked for those older batches that eventually were upped to Evergreen. This is because prototype devices are totally allowed, but a mass production phone needs FCC certification, which Purism didn't have in 2021, which is a very crucial detail they never mentioned. In fact, this was confirmed by a Purism team member in March of this year that they never had FCC certification. And if you look up their FCC certification, you'll see it was approved in July 2021, which is around the time that they started this massive spike in shipments, which is not likely to be a coincidence. This means Purism was knowingly not letting people like myself know about the lack of FCC certification this entire time they were claiming to be shipping phones. And the phones they were shipping weren't FCC certified. It's not far-fetched, and I think it's actually more accurate to claim that the actual promised, mass-produced, FCC certified Evergreen never started shipping at all until early 2022, despite them claiming the phone started shipping in November 2020. This might sound like a technicality here, but it's actually kind of a big deal. There was never a distinction made to the public about this, and the lack of transparency is a massive red flag, especially for a device built on the ideas of freedom, open source, and transparency. And just to blur the lines further, in January 2021, the same year where Purism shipped almost no phones, the order page when buying one of these phones said you'd receive it in a few months, which is just a blatant lie no matter how you cut it. Now, even with all of this said, it's not actually the final reason I requested a refund. There's a final piece to the story. Like many, I visited the Purism site convinced this was the answer to a freer platform alternative to the big tech options. But they never actually promised a phone that's necessarily a competitor to that. I personally filled in that gap myself, as well as many people in the community, and I accept the blame for having unrealistic expectations for this phone. Lucky for me, I have one of the most minimal digital lives out there, where my phone has 3 core uses: Signal, KeyPass, and a browser. KeyPass and browser on the Librem 5, great. Signal, no go. You can run desktop Signal or the Android version virtualized, but it'll likely never have an official mobile Signal client. Which brings me to the real reason I requested a refund. Not because of their complete lack of transparency, but I can't even daily drive this phone. Very few people can. If we look at Pine64 and other group building Linux devices, they actively warn their users when buying the phone what they're getting into. And on that note, you can actually order a Pine phone and receive it all at a normal price for the hardware you're getting. Just saying. At its core, the Librem 5 is an outrageously priced phone with 5-year-old hardware that can't be daily driven for most people, which has been handled in a very non-transparent manner. My pre-order experience has been nothing short of awful, and these reasons are why I requested a refund, which was ultimately denied. You might think I'm a whiner, and that's fine, call me that, but I think I was patient, I've been fair, understanding, and I don't think the expectations I set were unrealistic given the promises that were made. I also think it's important to make this video because most YouTubers were given Librem 5s and given special treatments, whereas we didn't get any of that. So I'm giving you the raw experience as a typical end user who ordered this phone with their own money. A quick update a few months after recording this video, I wanted to throw in that we actually have attempted to reach out to Purism in the past to get more formal information from them, but never heard back. Now, I'm not saying we were purposefully avoided or anything, I'm sure they're very busy, but we did try to reach out to get more info. Ultimately, I think it's crazy you should have to reach out anyway to just be on the loop on basic information about what's happening for an expensive device that you paid for, but have never received or have never been given accurate information about. I really think reflecting on all of this, my biggest issue is the complete and utter lack of transparency around all of this, which should not exist for a device that's built on those ideals. And I would love to be proven wrong, and I hope that Purism can clear the air for both myself, but especially other people who order the device, because right now, I just can't in good faith recommend anyone buys this phone. But I don't want that to be the case, and I hope that we get a device that gives people an option that's not iOS and Android. With all of this said, I still really hope we get the phone that can take down the duopoly. I'll still be waiting for Librem 5 shipping updates to hopefully someday try one myself, but I'm more convinced that Pine 64's approach is the way forward. In fact, they recently released a Pine Phone Pro that completely annihilates the specs of the Librem 5 at a fraction of the cost, and we covered that announcement in this video, so go give that a watch to learn more about what Pine 64 is offering. I'll see you over there, and we'll see you next time on Techlore.